Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Yourself?
I'm doing good. So good to catch up with you, man.
Dude, always. It's always a good time.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me about particularly about Captain Planet. This thing's been a passion project for a long time.
Well,
So,
I'm looking forward to it. So,
yeah, man. So thank you again for taking the time to chat. I appreciate it.
no, anytime. Well, I mean, first off, you're the homie. So,
Ah,
the door is open. The door is open for you. Okay, we don't close the door to David Pepose here. We don't do that here. That's not what we do here.
well,
Speaking of, welcome to the show.
happy to be here.
Yeah. So for just in case if anyone was tuning in for the first time, if you missed our last chat, which I do recommend, go back and check it out, and also go check out Space Ghost. There's a full trade out for Space Ghost, I think.
Yes, there is.
Right now. So I'm just going to let's go and get this out of the way. Let's go and just get this out of the way. Let's go and just say it now. If you haven't done so already, A, go check out the chat about Space Ghost, but also B, go check out Space Ghost. This is a really good book. It is one of my favorite books of all of last year. And yeah, we have David Pepose on the stream right now. And not only that, we've also got the writer of a great many good things. Right now, you got you got a cable series.
Yep.
That's running right now. I think I know the first issue's come out. I can't remember. I think the second issue either is about to come out. Okay, that's what it was. It comes out tomorrow. So, yep. So it got the cable series. Literally, kind of like lines up with the Timeless one shot that came out just this last year. That was really good. You did what was it? Moon. There was the Moon Knight, City of Gods, or City of the Dead. That's what it was. I always want to say City of the Gods. I don't know why. But also you did Punisher. Once again, Space Ghost. I'm gonna keep putting that out there until y'all go check it out. And yeah, just doing all kinds of fantastic things. You're getting around all over the place, and I love to see it. I love to see it.
Busy is the best four-letter word a freelancer can say, and I've been very busy. Like you said, with Space Ghost, which is issue 10 comes out in a week tomorrow.
That's insane.
Yeah. Cable Love and Chrome issue 2 comes out tomorrow. The upcoming Speed Racer with Mad Cave Studios. It's up on Free Comic Book Day. And the thing that I know you brought me here to talk about, which is the upcoming relaunch of Captain Planet. And,
oh man,
Dynamite Entertainment kicking off on Wednesday, April 23rd, the day after Earth Day.
I didn't even think about that. It didn't even cross my mind.
Yes, we have been determined to have that book out on Earth Day week for some time. And I'm working with artist Amon Casalos on it. And boy, it has been a real passion project of mine. This is a book that I've been lobbying to write across every publisher in town for literally 10 years.
Wow.
I'm so thrilled that we finally got this thing over the plate. This is an idea that I've been working on for quite some time. And so I'm really excited that it finally gets to see the light of day.
Let me ask you this. So how long have you known that you were, you say you've been planning this for a long time, but how long did you know you're going to be writing Space Ghost?
Yeah. So, it's such a funny story of how this particular iteration of Captain Planet came into being, which is, it was at San Diego Comic-Con last year that Dynamite announced on the heels of their initial Warner Brothers properties like Thundercats, and Space Ghost, and Johnny Quest, and the Powerpuff Girls, that they were going to bring in more Warner Brothers properties to publish books on. And in that press release was Captain Planet. And I was at BarCon at San Diego Comic-Con when I saw that email come in. And I saw my editor, Joe Ryvant, and the publisher, Nick Barucci, at BarCon. And I walked over with my iPhone and said, "So you're giving me Captain Planet, right?" And they were not aware of what of a Captain Planet fan I am, and so I kind of gave them a little bit of the broad strokes of what I wanted to do. And Joe Ryvant, who has been a wonderful editor to work with on Space Ghost, was inclined to give me that shot. And so far we've been doing some really fun stuff with it. I'm in the middle of writing issue 3 as we speak. But we've got some really fun stuff planned. This is a brand new relaunch. You don't have to have watched any of the cartoons for it to make sense, similar to our approach on Space Ghost. This is very much a 2025 reimagining of the whole concept from top to bottom. And so we're going to start incorporating all these classic characters, all the classic Planeteers and the classic villains, but doing it in a very modern way that I think is going to really show how timely and prescient that Captain Planet as a concept really is.
Well, and that's something that, man, I gotta like, one thing I always love to hear when talking to everyone that's doing stuff right now,
Sure.
at Dynamite, is that like, I feel like, what always gets kind of lost in the translation is how much Dynamite is willing to give people those passion projects, because like almost every single person that I've talked to in the last year or two that is working on something, it's like, this is something that I really wanted. Like I want, like, not to say no one else wanted it, but I really wanted it, and I got to do it. And I love seeing that. I love seeing that. Talking about how important Captain Planet is, because I feel like I know a lot of people probably think back on Captain Planet, think, oh, it was 22-minute PSA to pick up your trash and not throw stuff in the lake. But the thing is, I feel like we kind of needed that, and I feel like the world is actually worse for not having had that in a while, because I think we kind of forgot how the ecosystem works.
Well, I think there's a lot of things with that, with the original show. I mean, first off, it's I know there are people who ding the original Captain Planet for not being subtle, but in 2025, I feel like subtlety has kind of been thrown out the window a little bit.
Who needs it?
I think the other thing is that it was such a forward-thinking show, and now I think the rest of the world's actually really caught up to it, and sometimes a spiriting and scary way. In 1989, when that cartoon first aired, it was all about it was all about protecting the environment, because the effects of climate change were then seen as hypothetical.
Right.
The biggest danger was the hole in the ozone layer, which there was a whole lot of international collaboration that tackled that. I think now climate change is no longer a hypothetical. This is we are living in it. We see environmental disasters every season. I lived in New York during Hurricane Sandy. I live in Los Angeles now with the wildfires that just were put out. My brother had to evacuate for those. My parents live in the Midwest, where they just had record freezing temperatures. This is just stuff in the continental United States. This is happening everywhere. And so for me, climate change, it's got a human cost. There's people on the ground who are living through these changes right now. And on the flip side of that, what is fueling climate change? It's human greed. It's people who want to consolidate money and power and wealth. And they don't really care who gets kind of caught in that crossfire. The people who get hurt there are the little people who can't afford it.
Right.
Rather than these billionaires that they feel like they can buy their way out of any consequences. And so in that regard, these villains in Captain Planet that might have been seen as caricatures, we're living it now.
Yes. There's a real Duke Nukem. There's literally
we have a Lucian Plunder, also known as Luton Plunder from the original cartoon, as our villain, and that's somebody I've wanted for a very long time, and it was very striking to see Lucian Plunder throwing Nazi salutes during the inauguration, and
no, it was a Roman salute. Yeah. He was just telling everyone how much he really loved 1940s Germany.
Yeah,
and all its aesthetics.
It was sort of my Judaism sense was tingling.
You're right. It's like that's not what he said it was.
And so I think but what I want to make sure that I'm clear that we live in a world where things are very tense and scary right now, but I think Captain Planet it's something about hope. This is honestly, I think, a very it's the opposite of cynical. And I think that's
Mm.
something I love so much about that original cartoon, is that it'd be so easy to just kind of give into despair and say,
Mm.
we failed, let's just count out our days. There's nothing we can do. And there's themes in Captain Planet that, his motto is the power is yours. And to me, that really is the core of the whole concept. Is Captain Planet, even though he's the title character, he kind of shows up as a moment of last resort. And
Yes.
oftentimes he's injured and the Planeteers need to help him out. It's very much, you can't just wish this away. This isn't just like a genie that you can just kind of, say, all right, we're fixing the environment. This is something that people on the ground, and from all around the world, we have to come together, and only together can we kind of fix what's going on. And so that's why I love this concept so much, is it really is, it's elevated. There's those elements of fantasy to it, but it's also, I think it's a very street level kind of concept. The
Mm.
Planets they're not superheroes. They are
Right.
ordinary people who have been unexpectedly given extraordinary power, and now they have to really figure out on the fly, like, what are they going to do with it, especially in a world that's very eager to try to exploit them to perpetuate the system that's gotten us here in the first place.
Mm.
And so that has been something that's been really fun for me. Similar to my approach on Space Ghost, where I pitch that as what would happen if we started Space Ghost in the year 2024 instead of in the 1960s.
Mm.
For me, Captain Planet, it's okay, if we were introducing this in the year 2025, what would it look like? The historical and geopolitical context have shifted quite dramatically in the 36 years since the show debuted. An example I always like to think of is Linka, who has the power of wind. In 1989, they said she hailed from the Soviet Union. And
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
yeah, in the original cartoon, the first season, it's the Soviet Union. And by season 2 or 3, they've already, the Berlin Wall has fallen. They've changed it to Russia. And that was like a big signal point for me, was how has Russia changed so much since then? And so, for example, we had Linka, who was, I think, the most conservative Planeteer in the original
Mm.
cartoon, and now she's actually the most progressive. She's a member of
I
kind of
like that.
an eco-activist punk band, sort of in the vein of like of a Pussy Riot.
I
And
like it.
at the same time, she has a little bit of a secret to her that kind of gives her some interesting nuance and tension as far as her environmental ambitions versus where she's come from. And so we're doing that kind of interesting thing for all of the characters. Kwame, who is the team leader, and I pitched him as Cyclops meets Sam from Ted Lasso. Very,
Ah.
he's charming, he's kind of quiet and unassuming, but he's the one who knows how to work in a team because he's a former soccer star from Ghana.
Mm.
And at the same time, something has cut his career short. He's something has injured his leg, and so that explains the walking stick that
Mm.
he had, the pilot. And for me, Kwame's the kind of guy who, he had a path, and life got in the way. And rather than becoming bitter and sad about it, he's had to kind of think outside of the box.
Mm.
But I think his disability and the way that he kind of navigates the world is a core part of who he is. And the when he gets the power of Earth, there's definitely different wrinkles that kind of come in to that context for him. Wheeler, our American who's got the power of fire, we've tweaked his origins somewhat. In the original cartoon, he comes from Brooklyn, but I felt that
Right.
there was a way to really kind of key in on what I see as his central message, which he's the skeptic. He's kind of the American who doesn't realize why the Planeteer's mission matters. And so I see him as very much a point of
Mm.
view character of, we're going to follow him as he finds out, why does this mission matter, and why is he somebody who should be a part of this. And so we recontextualized him. He's an auto worker from Detroit, and so
Oh.
yeah, and so as a result, he's got a very complicated relationship with, as far as like green tech and the various innovations that are going in the auto industry, because that inevitably, for him, that could mean his job, that could mean his life,
Mm.
his family's livelihood. And so he's a very interesting character to play with, especially the way that he and Linka, as love interests in the original cartoon, how they
Mm.
play one another. Gee,
Real quick, I just
yeah,
want to
shoot.
say, making Wheeler, like having Wheeler, kind of playing into that American skepticism,
Yeah,
could not be more timely.
yes.
I don't think you could have plotted that better if you tried.
Thank you. Well, I think it speaks to this concept in general, Captain Planet. It's so easy to brush it off. And I totally get it. The original cartoon, like you said, it was very much, it was sort of pioneering edutainment. When
Yeah.
Ted Turner came up with it, he was like, I want to be able to instill these values in children, and I know superheroes are popular, so let's figure out a way to do that. Like I said, the words ahead of its time really kind of, I keep coming back to that. But it's easy to kind of just say, oh, well, like we have other priorities, and we do there are other priorities out there that are very pressing: healthcare, the economy, uh,
Mm.
just the way that we
Oh,
govern our
fair
country,
wages and
their wages, and how do we treat members of marginalized communities? All of these
Mhm.
things are important. Um, and so it's easy, and I think that is a reason why environmentalism is sort of like often swept under the rug. It's not seen as sexy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wouldn't call it sexy either to have like flash flooding that like takes out town,
Or random
but
fires that just can't
or
seem to be put out. I mean, just
yeah.
I
Um,
just
and so I feel like you need somebody who not only as a character kind of figures out like, well, why should I give a damn, but also to like explain to the readers why should I give a damn. Um, And so we've got this like interesting kind of dynamic between all the Planeteers, of like some of them are more keyed in to
mm,
the environmental cause. Others are sort of they're impacted by it. It's part of their context. And then there are others who just like they don't get it. And so you kind of have to steer them into it. Um, and so then we have Gi from South
mm,
Korea, who she's a really interesting character who we've really kind of recontextualized in a big way because um, having written books like Savage Avengers and other team books, you find that you want different archetypes to be represented. And for me, one of my favorite archetypes is what I call the gearhead. Somebody
mhm,
who, like is smart, somebody who knows science, somebody who's able to kind of like connect the dots in terms of how can they leverage their environment to like win a fight, or how do they figure out somebody's weakness. And I felt for a book like Captain Planet, the science matters, and
mhm.
having somebody who's really acutely aware of this. And so Guy is a really interesting character in that, like, we've leaned into the marine biology of it all. And in the cartoon that meant she was just a kind of a diver, but for me I'm
Yeah.
like, that means you're also kind of a nerd.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's like kind of the cheery kid sister of the whole team.
Mm,
But we have a slight spoiler, like we have a line in the series where she says, like I know the stakes better than anybody because this is my business. This is what I look into. And my options are either I just give in to despair or I
mm.
hope. And that's a choice. And I think that's such a powerful statement for our world. I outlined all this months before the election, and of course, I was hoping that we would turn to our better angels. But I think you need characters who say that even when times are dark, you
Mhm.
know, we have a choice. The choice is either we kind of give into despair, or hope is sort of a radical subversive act. Um, and I think speaking of subversive, I think our take on Mati is probably the most subversive take on all of it. And I'm
Ooh.
frankly, I'm thrilled that Warner Brothers let me do it. Um, but for those who have watched the original cartoon of Captain Planet, and I should say, if you haven't watched the cartoon of Captain Planet, I should give a quick kind of primer on it. It's five ordinary people summoned from around the world by Gaia, the spirit of the earth, and they're given five elemental rings: earth, fire, wind, water, and heart. And they can use those rings together to summon this immortal elemental demigod named Captain Planet. And so they fight various environmental villains. And so our fifth planeteer, Mati, was always seen as the punchline of the show
Yeah.
because people say, and they say it to me all the time now, what the hell is the power of heart? And for me, the power of heart is actually fascinating because um, it's tactical telepathy. And
Yeah.
so the thing that's so interesting to me about Mati is he comes from Brazil, where indigenous people in Brazil have not been treated particularly well, particularly by mining companies. And so they are being forced off of like ancestral lands to dig into their own backyards. And there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of oppression, and Mati has seen all of it. And this is a character who is very much predisposed towards lashing out. This is very much a character who was ready to kind of take back his land through violence.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets the power of heart, and suddenly it cleanses his heart of all rage. And suddenly he becomes an avowed pacifist because he realizes just how connected we are. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, he's kind of like Shang-Chi, and he's a little like Batman, where like he's a pacifist who could absolutely take you apart.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing the way that Amon has drawn Bati, he's kind of smoldering. Like I'm like, okay, we've got like I don't know if the world's ready for hot Mati, but they're gonna find out in April.
well, I was gonna say the most common thing I've seen so far is Captain Planet is super sexy now.
Yeah.
And now Mati.
It's funny. It's funny you say that. We have introduced a sexy beard dad Captain Planet to the world. That's our gift to 2025. And yeah, I feel like, the book is titled Captain Planet. You want something with the title character. And it's funny. I saw somebody online say that we gave Captain Planet a beard because he's my self-insert, and I was like, that's the nicest thing that anyone's ever said. I said that to my wife, and she like cracked up on the couch. I don't think anybody's accusing me of being Captain Planet anymore.
Well,
but
I don't know. People are weird. That's all.
It's for me. Captain Planet. The part of trying to make this thing more resonant in the year 2025, a lot of it is mainly cosmetic, and it's mainly just minor tonal adjustments. All the bones are there, but for me, and no shade to the original cartoon, but I think the biggest element of the original show that might feel the most dated is Captain Planet's design, and that's because he was created in the 80s,
yes,
and he was originally supposed to be voiced by Tom Cruise, before Tom went
wow,
off to
yeah,
bigger and better things. But
he was running.
Yeah, you got the mullet, and you've got the belly shirt, the crop top, and the kind of Speedo bottoms. And I get that that's not something that like necessarily super flies in the year 2025. And so when Amon Casalos and I were talking about redesigning all these characters, I had a few thoughts that I threw in there, and a lot of them were for Captain Planet, where I said he's an elemental. He's created by the five fundamental forces of our world. And so I want him to reflect that there's a little bit of a Superman vibe to him. He's Superman with metamorphose powers.
Right.
That instead of being made out of flesh and blood, he's made out of ice and stone, and his hair's made out of green fire, and we've got roots kind of coming out of his chest, and his shoulders are made out of stone. Just like
let me pull this up so everybody kind of see what we're talking about here.
Yeah, to play up that he's this kind of immortal elemental champion. But the beard was actually something that Amon really surprised us all on, is that when he drew a few ideas, a few concepts, one of them had a beard, and we all immediately latched onto the beard. We thought, what a cool, in the same way that like Absolute Batman is like jacked. In the same way that Ultimate Spider-Man has the beard. We thought the idea of kind of giving this character like a bold design choice to really stand out, and reestablish that like this is not a Captain Planet you're familiar with.
Right.
And so bearded Captain Planet, we were everybody involved, from me, my editor Joe Rybant, Warner Brothers, everybody was like, yeah, that's a great idea. So Amon really deserves all the credit for that beard. But for me, Captain Planet is such an interesting character because he shows that like heroism and a lack of cynicism doesn't go out of style. That he's been around for millennia, and we'll actually see some of Cap's previous adventures as the series progresses. Um, but something I wanted to do was, I do this for every book, particularly with these classic cartoons, is that they didn't really have limitations back then, and I think that was by design. It meant that the writers could kind of, they didn't have to waste time justifying what the characters could and couldn't do. They could just do
Mm.
whatever they needed. That's great for them. That's very hard for me.
Right.
Choreograph anything. How do you give, how do you establish stakes if you can just pull out random powers out of your pocket? And so for me, I really kind of had to focus on like, how does Cap work? Like
Mm.
how does he work as in the context of the Planeteers? Why don't they just summon him permanently and just let him take care of everything? We have a workaround for that. But also his dynamic with Gaia, who we've actually recontextualized in this book as well. In the cartoon, she's sort of like this immortal spirit of the earth.
Mm.
And she's got all these powers. And for me, I, having two kind of immortal champions felt like a lot. And so we've
Yeah.
actually recontextualized Gaia as sort of a Dalai Lama figure. She's a human
Mm.
being, just like the Planeteers, and that allows them to kind of interact with her on their level, but also it speaks to that symbiosis of all this.
Mm.
Captain Planet and a human being, and so she's the custodian of the five elemental rings. And as we see in our intro of the series, and we've put out preview art, so no spoil. It's not a spoiler.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Um, we open our book on the invasion of Hope Island, which is where Gaia's temple is. And she is being hunted down by mercenaries from places unknown who want to use her powers. And so that's sort of how Captain Planet is brought into the modern era, trying to rescue her. Things do not go as planned. And so Gaia, as sort of a Hail Mary, scatters the rings around the world in sort of a Green Lantern kind of fashion and
Mm.
selects these five ring bearers from around the world. And so, these seven characters really kind of form the core of our book in such an interesting and a really just textured kind of way. Like all these characters have different backgrounds and they have different personalities and different perspectives on things, and watching them kind of, certain groups kind of form and certain groups kind of clash, and
Mm.
it's a fun dynamic before you throw in the villains. And we've got some really great villains in there. We're throwing in a bunch of classic Captain Planet villains, including Lucian Plunder, who's a billionaire industrialist who his ambition is only outmatched by his greed. We have Duke Nukem, who I'm actually in the process of writing right now.
Ooh.
We're doing kind of something really cool with him.
I can't wait to see it.
Dr. Blight and her AI Maul are going to definitely play an important role.
Ooh.
Argos Bleak as Plunder's kind of second in command, and we do have some other villains kind of waiting in the wings for some really cool stuff going on with that. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I think similar to Space Ghost, I've thought for a very long time the ingredients for success are there, and I think if anything, it sort of has only ripened in time. I came up with this initial pitch over 10 years ago. I
Oh
had
wow.
watched I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time,
Mm.
and I remember watching that and being so blown away, and then thinking, somebody really should have done this for Captain Planet. And then I realized I could be the one that does that for Captain Planet. And so it really is kind of this globe-trotting action adventure it's kind of like X-Men 2 meets Avatar: The Last Airbender, where
Ooh.
you've got sort of these very engaging kids who come from different places from around the world and different backgrounds, and they're fighting for something that's very timely and very important, and something that's kind of ripped from today's headlines. But also, like, we've got these cool heightened elemental powers that,
Mm.
seeing the Planeteers wielding them individually, or seeing them pair up and figure out how do their powers interact with each other, or seeing them all consolidate into Captain Planet and seeing the way that he does, his twist on all these powers.
Mm.
Um, it's a lot of fun, action, and excitement. It's really kind of pushing my fight choreography chops to the limit. Um, but it's really like it's a ton of fun. And I know there's a lot of people who,
Man.
they might have a degree of skepticism about Captain Planet. They might say, first off, they might be worried, is this going to be a dark, gritty reboot of Captain Planet? And that couldn't be further from the truth. In the same way that Space Ghost was, I don't consider that to be a dark and gritty reboot.
No.
This is even less gritty. You know, I think this is very much a you know, it's a superhero story minus the superheroes. You know, that's why
Yeah.
I think the idea of Marvel's mutants really is kind of like the best analogous concept, is that, you know, these are just ordinary people who have been given extraordinary powers. And even Captain Planet, he's kind of the closest thing that we have to like a true blue superhero, but
Mhm.
ultimately, you know, he's the most idealistic out of all of them. He's somebody whose entire mission in life is that he doesn't want to see anybody die, and
Yeah.
that's why he's doing all this. And so that has been really exciting to get to write, and just seeing these characters playing off of each other. It's been a real treat. I haven't had, you know, I this is, yeah, if Space Ghost is my take on Batman, this is my take on the X-Men. And
I like it.
seeing this team starting to form together, it's been it's really, this, the leap of faith really feels like it's been rewarded.
Well, I can say this much, just from the preview of it that I've seen and just the look of it, it looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Uh,
Amon Casalos, I really want to give him a shout out because
mm,
I was not familiar with his game.
mm.
You know, when we started working together, Joe Rybant was the one that put him on the book, and he has been drawing just the hell out of this book. It's
It
looking,
looks great.
his character designs are great. The way that his acting for these characters is really sensational. Some of the best acting that I've
Oh
ever
yes.
encountered. And so I think he's been, you know, he's an artist who I think has been severely underrated. And so it's kind of my mission to make sure that people know who he is.
Yeah.
You know, like,
He's fantastic.
yeah,
He's doing good work.
sensational work in all this. And you haven't even seen the Planeteers yet.
No,
Uh,
I think
like
I've
they
only seen the like I think Dynamite put out like a they
the
put out
character
the
sketches.
character sketch. Yeah, that's the only thing
Yeah.
I've seen. But just even on that alone, like I was well, for one, I was already sold just off the covers. But like but seeing the actual like Planeteers, Gaia, how they're all like kind of lined up together.
Yep.
Like I was like, this is gonna be good. I was like, it's gonna be good. It's up. It's got. They look just. They look just enough like their original counterparts,
Sure.
but updated enough to where like I don't feel like, oh, you completely changed them. They're not the same. Like they like the spirit. The spirit of the characters is still very evident
Yeah.
in their appearance, and I think that's a very hard thing to do. Yeah, when you're updating something that's like Captain Planet's over 30 years old, I think now, by this year.
Yep.
And it's difficult to do with something like that.
Sure.
And I think you did a great job.
Thank you. It's really been a team effort. I mean,
Mm,
like, just seeing the storytelling that Iman is bringing to all this, and the fact that he's able to, he really does, he does what the best artists in the business do, which is, they take the script and they really elevate it. He adds so much to it, so much drama, so much emotion, so much likability. You'll particularly, and I think that's important because we're introducing all the Planeteers in issue 1 through kind of a series of vignettes. And so, you know, we're only seeing them very, very quickly in issue
mm,
1, before they all kind of come together in issue 2. And I the way that Amon makes you fall in love with these characters in just the span of like a couple of panels, it's deeply impressive. And you know, I really appreciate having him as a collaborator because he clearly is as invested in this as I am, and he clearly is
mm,
looking at swinging. And you see it in the pages. And I think that's something that, you know, I mean, it'd be very easy, particularly for a project like this, for
mm.
somebody to just kind of blow it off and say, you know, it's Captain Planet, you know, who cares? And you know, I care. I wrote a, I think I wrote a, it was like a 20-page pitch
Oh
document for
man.
the series. And and when Amon was starting to go through the character designs and I was giving him some ideas for stuff, I was like, you know, we're updating this. This can be yours. So he really, he understood the assignment, and he continues to. So,
I love it. I love it.
yeah, he's very
This is my
talented.
Captain Planet now. This is my Captain Planet now
Yeah.
already.
Uh, so
Throw the
I'm just,
mullet out. Give me the
I'm,
Krasinski beard.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so I can't wait for everybody to get to see it. I can't wait for everybody to see these characters in action. This is definitely, it's a real treat. It's one of those books that I I took it on while juggling a few other assignments. Not because I enjoy not sleeping, but I just knew this was a book that if anybody else wrote this book, if I saw this book come out with somebody else's name on it after I've been beating the drum for this long, I would be salty and mad about it forever. So I I was like, I'm taking on one more book because I got to write Captain Planet. It's my destiny, and very grateful to Dynamite for giving me the latitude, and Warner Brothers for giving me the latitude to do so.
Well, I can definitely say this is definitely the you kind of teed me up here. This is kind of unrelated, but
Yeah.
kind of at the same time. You were talking about juggling,
Yeah,
multiple projects. So like, and I've always been curious about this because I know like especially in this industry, like you're probably always going to be working on at least a couple of things
sure.
simultaneously. But
Yeah,
like for you in this particular instance, like I said, you're doing, obviously Space Ghost still running, you're still doing Cable Love and Chrome.
yep.
You're doing Captain Planet, and I'm pretty sure you have like several other things you got to juggle as well. But how do you keep it all straight? Like how do you like keep each project, I guess for lack of a better way to put it, like how do you keep them all from bleeding into each other?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's a few things that kind of go into it. One is I'm very heavily detailed in my outlining.
Mhm.
I don't send in stuff to my editors unless I've already done like the beat sheets. I write it all out in pretty significant detail. So that way, if there's any like little changes, in the mix, they're usually pretty small. And so I tend to do that. It's also a matter of, you kind of learn how to triage based on kind of where your artists are at,
Mhm.
and you communicate with your editors if there's ever like a traffic jam kind of coming up. I'm also fortunate that, like some of my projects were kind of coming as others were ending. Like
Okay.
I've already wrapped up my scripting on Cable Love and Chrome, and so
Mhm.
the only thing I'm working on my lettering pass for the fourth issue right now, while Mike Henderson draws the last issue. So my responsibilities there are mostly finished. And meanwhile, I'm sort of taking the baton for Speed Racer over at Mad
Mhm.
Cat. I'm going to be starting. I wrote my free comic book day issue, but I'm going to be starting on the first issue on that very soon.
Okay.
And then sort of juggling kind of my ongoing responsibilities for Space Ghost while sort of keeping ahead of them on Captain Planet. And so, I mean, it's one of those, you don't really get to take a whole lot of days off, for sure. And I tend to kind of like try to double time things on the weekend. But I think thankfully, I'm very lucky that all my projects feel kind of different tonally.
Mhm.
There's something unique about each and every one of them. So that way I'm not just sort of leaning on the same muscles for everything. I remember probably I had a fairly challenging, it was 2020 three, that summer, where I was writing Moon Knight and Punisher and The Devil That
Mhm.
Wears Space concurrently. That was very
Oh
challenging
God.
for me because they all kind of felt in a similar tonal headspace, and so
Mhm.
that was like, how do you vary it up? And in that, you rely on your concept, you rely on your artists, and then you just kind of like try your best to make sure you don't like accidentally plagiarize yourself. Um,
Well, I mean, if you're gonna plagiarize anybody,
yeah, I mean, at least
it
at
should
least I'll
always be
forgive myself.
yourself,
Yeah,
but
at least I'll
you don't
forgive
want to
myself.
do it.
But there's a fine line between like doing a Claremontism where like you're using like similar lines in certain things versus like, oh no, I just forgot.
Yeah.
But thankfully with these projects, Cable was sort of like hard sci-fi with
Mm.
a romance twist, and Space Ghost is sort of like, I think, very traditional superheroics with sort of in a sci-fi setting. So I can
like
kind of,
found family and
yeah, like I can draw in sci-fi tropes, but it's very much like I think very middle of the road, like superhero stuff, which is my wheelhouse. Um, Captain Planet is sort of, it's a little more real world. It's sort of, I think, the cross section between street level superheroics and like a little bit of fantasy elements, but also like a disaster movie.
mm.
And so that's, and then Speed Racer is kind of like, it's mostly action. It's a sports book,
Right.
and being able to do it with race cars, like, that's kind of a different kind of thing that's very visually driven. And so with all that, it's definitely a challenge, to kind of have all these, spinning all these plates, but they all feel like projects that feel very important to me. And
Okay.
and so but there's always stuff on the fire. I have another creator-owned book that I thankfully had been long written, but it's finally seeing the light of day, and I think I'm hoping we'll be able to talk about that soon.
Okay.
That'll be out later this year. Alex Cormack and I, the artist from The Devil That Wears My Face, he and I have been greenlit on another project together, and we're sort of kind of figuring out like the time
Mm.
on all that. And so yeah, I mean, that's the thing about being a comics writer, and something I'm really grateful for. But something else I'm also still kind of figuring out. I feel like this past year, post Space Ghost, my schedule has suddenly kind of opened up in a way that I hadn't experienced before, or I did kind of for a little while over at Marvel, but just in-house at Marvel. So kind of
Mm.
juggling between different publishers is a new experience for me, but I think it's been great. I've been so lucky to work with such great collaborators, and I think seeing how Space Ghost is coming together, and seeing how Captain Planet's coming together, and seeing how Speed Racer's coming together. Um, it does kind of it puts some wind in your sails, that you get so excited about about the final product, that you start falling in love with the characters. You start getting really grateful for your collaborators and seeing how they bring these things to life. And so, yeah, I couldn't be more fortunate to be now, working on such amazingly fun projects.
Well, so I want to touch on an elephant in the room, something that this is probably about maybe a few weeks ago, I think. I
Okay.
feel like it's a few weeks ago. My co-host on the Blur Cave, Carter, and I, we were talking about, I think kind of closer to when, some of the covers for the book were starting to come out.
Sure.
And people were, the press releases, whatnot, coming out, and kind of showing off, kind of some of the stuff we were looking at a minute ago. And I remember, I remember someone asking me, as if I had any inside track, like if it was, oh man, I wonder if people are going to come to this comic. And yeah, this is always bound to happen with just about any property, especially something that is, an old property, beloved property, whatever, the case may be. Someone's going to come along and get mad.
Sure.
That you woke it up. You woke up the book.
I'm so glad you asked me this.
You made Captain Planet woke. This, when I was a kid. When I was but a wee lad, and Captain Planet would come on, it wasn't woke. There was no message. It was just fun. And you had to come in and insert your woke agenda.
Oh, you're cracking me up, because yes, I've seen a handful of takes where they're like, they gave Captain Planet a woke makeover, and I'm like, yeah, man, like, that the show with the 5 international kids like protecting the environment from corrupted. Yeah, that was,
it was literally a rainbow coalition of
yeah,
kids.
it was like I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to take the book on so much, is that I knew that of course there's going to be people who we will generously say missed the point of the original
Yes.
cartoon. And then of course there are bad actors out there, and like, but this is the property, I think, out of anything, I think, since Claremont's X-Men, that
Mm-hmm.
really feels the most organic to all this. Like, you
Yeah.
can't say, oh man, he injected all these politics in the international, for this international diverse group. uh what we have done, and I think it was by design through Ted Turner, that he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to show that this isn't something that any one country can handle on its own. This has to be like a world combined effort. But also, for me growing up, and we may have talked about this before, but I have a 9-year gap between me and my younger siblings.
Mm-hmm.
So I was an only child for a little while. And for me, I learned how to make friends really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that was my favorite thing, I think, about watching the original Captain Planet. Wasn't the superhero elements, because I was already pretty keyed into superhero stuff, and so I loved, I was a big Marvel and DC kid. For me, the
Mm-hmm.
thing that was interesting, that I loved so much about it, was this is like a really cool friend group, that
Yeah.
everybody's really different and everybody kind of brings their own thing to the table. And so I think that's what kind of Captain Planet is it really is, it's kind of an exercise in building empathy towards
Yeah.
people that aren't like you. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, that's something that's always been really important to me. We've probably talked about this before, but I
Mm-hmm.
grew up Jewish in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know what it's like, and all your friends are celebrating Christmas and you don't. Like, I know
Right.
what it's like to sort of feel, kind of just that little bit of like, okay, you're a little bit different than kind of the cultural homogeny.
Right.
And
You feel like on the outside, not,
yeah, and so for me, and this is something, not like, this is, I think, the thing that I love most about our country, and the values that we should be fighting for, is that there should be room for everybody at the table. There should
Yeah.
be room for everybody, to be able to live their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm lucky. Listen, I know that, like, as a straight white Jewish guy, like, I pass, like,
Mm-hmm.
nobody besides the Hasidic guys outside of my supermarket can clock me. Those guys somehow they got the Judar, like, on lock. But I've always felt, and I feel very fortunate that, like, my friend group, has become very diverse,
Mm-hmm.
as I've gotten older. And so for me, I think, why shouldn't we be offering everybody a spot at the table?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think, ultimately, like, if there are wildfires going on, you know, um, like, you can point fingers at whoever you want as far as the government is concerned, but, like,
Mm-hmm.
the Santa Ana winds are a thing. And if a transformer
Yeah.
blows up and it casts embers going 80 miles per hour, you're gonna have a forest fire. And when there's no rain in California, it's gonna make forest fires. I lived through Hurricane Sandy, eventually the problem is us,
Yes.
it is human beings. But I think for me, Captain Planet, like, the themes are there. It's organic. It is a core part of the original cartoon. It's a core part of what our series is about. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, my goal has been, okay, how do we introduce all this stuff in the most organic and character driven and emotional way possible? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
that is, if you want to change minds, if you want people to think about things, if you want to just broaden their horizons, the best way to do it, in my mind, is to appeal to them emotionally.
Yeah.
And so I
Change
think,
hearts.
yeah, I think through these, I think these characters, they're really they're really something. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
really, I think, 201, they're very engaging, and it's, I think, readers will fall in love with them very quickly. Um, and listen, if my book gives people even just a second's hesitation, if they just think for a minute, hey, like, you know, what would my life be like if I came from Ghana or South Korea or Russia or Brazil, or hell, even Detroit? I feel like I've done my job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm curing cancer here. Like, I do, I think for me, like, of course, like, you want your books to aspire to something, and you want your books to have a
Mm-hmm.
higher message. But I think I feel very acutely aware that, like, there's only so much a comic book can do. I think,
Yeah.
if anything, I think it's so easy to conflate the material we consume as some sort of actual activism. Whereas like I hope that inspires you
Yes.
to get involved, but like it can't be that. It can't just be I bought Captain Planet and I've saved the world. Um, but
If only it were that
if
easy. If it were
only it
that
were that
easy.
easy. We are 70% recycled paper.
Well, I
So
mean,
but I think for me I love having like a diverse cast in this book. And if anything, we've taken steps to even further diversify these characters. The fact that
mhm.
we have Kwame who like has a disability. That was something that was not in the original cartoon, but I was like, that's something that I want reflected in the book.
Yeah.
Something about we have LGBT representation in the book, because that's
Oh,
something that I really wanted to at least touch upon.
I
Because
like it.
like these people exist. And I think it's in the spirit of the original cartoon that Ted Turner, if LGBTQ people were part of the cultural conversation in 1989, or part of the wider cultural conversation,
Oh
that's
yeah.
something that would have been included then too.
Oh, of
You know,
course.
and so, yeah, I mean, of course, there's going to be bad actors, and there's going to be people who didn't understand the point of the original show who say, "Oh, he's got a beard and he's woke now." And I, all I could say is that I hope they give us a shot. I think this
Mm.
is beyond, I think, having like a good message that I think is right in the same vein as when Len Wein brought together the International X-Men. Um, it's also like just
Another woke
really cool
book.
action. It's a fun book, man.
Yeah,
Like
I love it. I love it.
and I know it's not going to appeal to every single person, but
Mm.
like I don't know, man. Like I think when you have like a kind of this globe trotting like street level action adventure that's got like Avatar: The Last Airbending powers, like that rules
I
objectively.
love it. No,
Um,
there's no way. There's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely
yeah,
nothing wrong with it at
yeah.
all.
I think we are certainly staying true to the original core concept. And I think beyond that, like of course there's going to be people who they've got an axe to grind for whatever their reasons are, and I'm sure those people will you know probably not like the book. But
We're not worried about them.
I hope that anybody who's read my work on Space Ghost,
Mm.
who knows what I've done for that character. I think if you like that book, you're gonna love what we're doing on Captain Planet. I'm taking a very similar approach. And so yeah, check it out. I think you're really gonna dig it.
Well, I often say if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And this book is very much, you know, people having a seat at the table. So I mean, I'm here
Uh,
for it. It's what it's all about. I just shake my head. I shake my head whenever
uh,
uh
well,
I see these people.
you bring up a really good point, Ernie, in that, and I think this is something that is really, I think, speaks to every book I've ever done in some capacity, which is there's always room for a bigger table. There's
Of
always
course.
room to have more people in this. I've always seen comics, not just from a creative standpoint, but I try to look at it from a sustainable standpoint. Just like I saw that Dan Slott posted on his Blue Sky the other day that he had
Mm,
been writing at Marvel for 20 years, I think he had said. And the idea of me writing anywhere for 20 years, like, kind of boggles my mind. I want to make sure that we have an industry that will let me write for 20 years. And so I'm
mm,
always trying to think, how can we make this more accessible? How can we kind of invite more people to the table? I don't want to uh preach, to the choir. I want
mm.
converts. Uh
Yes.
and so that's something that I'm always trying to approach with different kinds of work. And I think Captain Planet is in such a unique place because of that 90s nostalgia factor, and because of people saying, "Oh, well, like I remember him in this very specific mode." and realizing just by virtue that our book exists, that there are other tones you can take with it. And not to say, again, to reiterate, we're not doing a dark, gritty version of Captain Planet. He's not a killer. He is not the Punisher.
This isn't the boys.
This isn't the boys. Although the boys version of Captain Planet, I'm shocked they haven't done that yet. That's brilliant, actually. But we're not doing. I think this is just it's the kind of book that it's the kind of counter programming that I knew nobody wanted to do, and that's why I pitched it for so long. But I've been thinking about this for a long time. And we've worked out the math, and the math is really cool. And so this is really it's a character for our times. These are heroes for our times. It's a book for our times. I wish it wasn't so timely. I was given the book.
Man.
I was offered the book at Comic-Con. I turned in my outline right before the election. I was greenlit. I was greenlit a couple. I think I was greenlit like 2 days after the election.
Oh wow.
We announced obviously the day after the inauguration.
Right.
And so it's one of those things, like, in certain ways, that it's that meme of like the person being hit by the dodgeball that says like the gift of prophecy. I did not want to be hit with the dodgeball in this way. But I think, anybody who says the Captain Planet is too unsubtle hasn't read a newspaper today.
No.
I think, we're, I think, able to kind of meet the real world where it's at. And in certain times I see things and I'm just like, I probably could have gone less subtle with this. If anything, our book might feel a little more realistic than some of the headlines we're seeing today. But
oh my God.
I think this is a book that I wish it wasn't so timely, but it is. And so I think we're all working really hard to make sure that we pay respect to the source material, we pay respect to our readers, and we pay respect to these characters, and try to deliver a book that feels as timely as the moment we're living in.
Well, I for one am excited. I can definitely say that just for my experience with your prior work, like I said, Space Ghost, go read it. Just go read it, y'all. Just go see what I'm talking about, and trust me, you'll be hook, line, and sinker on this. I do want to say just real quick, just because we got a message here from this is from my homie Gearless Mo. He said they're giving the audience what they want to see. I detect no lies. Thank you for the 49 months. And I guess, I want to, we got a couple of other questions here I wanted to just ask you real quick.
Geez.
And we got the infamous Mike Manhattan says, hey, David, is there any way to pick up that OZ comic you wrote?
There will be in a few months. We will be doing our third and final Kickstarter for that series. I believe we're shooting for around May, given some of the announcements I've got coming out and some family related stuff that I've got going on. We're gonna be trying to have that Kickstarter wrapped before end of June. So stay tuned. We will have catch-up tiers for everything. So you'll be able to pick up the whole series if you haven't read it already, or any issues you might have missed in our previous 2 Kickstarters. Ooh. So stay tuned.
Well, hey, y'all heard it here. It's on the way. And I know now this one, I don't know if you can talk about this. I don't know if you can talk about this because I'm pretty sure we haven't even gotten the first issue, so I know that there is probably no way that this character comes up anytime terribly soon, but who knows? But John Stewart wanted to ask, I wonder if they're going to change the words to form Captain Pollution. I don't think you can say yet, but I don't know. I don't even know if you've gotten that far yet,
if I did, I wouldn't tell you.
There you go.
But
you got to go buy it.
So
you got to go buy
it. You got to go buy it, but otherwise.
Well, I will just say, for one, this is going to be coming out. I think it's April the 23rd. Just like so, like I said, just in time for Earth Day. We'll just get 70% recycled paper.
Yeah, I believe that's what it is.
You can't make this up, y'all. Look, this is literally just all the synchronicity in the world coming together and forming Voltron. Only in this case, no, it's actually more Captain Planet because you'll buy the powers combined. So I give you guys a spiel all the time, but I'm going to give it to you again. You're going into your comic book shop tomorrow, most likely. Some of you, I know at least. There's a person behind the counter. I don't know. Usually it's a person behind the counter. Go talk to him and say, hey, I was watching Blerd Without Fear talk to this David guy, and they were talking about this Captain Planet. You don't get that in my pull box. You just put the whole series in there. Go do that. Go do that, and that'll go a long ways towards maybe you seeing a Captain Pollution somewhere down the road. I don't know. If you're for those that want to see it, and go do that, and also if you don't have an LCS in your area, God help you if you don't. But if you don't, I have included a link. If whether you're on Twitch or YouTube, it's pinned at the top. You can click that link. It'll take you straight to the Dynamite website, and you can pick up a copy of the first issue of Captain Planet right there for your viewing pleasure. As a matter of fact, here there's let me make sure because I want you guys to see what you're looking for. Say, hey, I want this in my pool box, or you go to Dynamite and go pick it up that way. Also, I have included some links. They're on the YouTube side, but if you're on Twitch, if you do !works, it'll pull up some of the same links. There should be links to stuff like the Devil That Wears My Face. There should be links to the Space Ghost trade. There should also be links to the Moon Knight City of the Dead and Punisher, and there's probably other stuff. I don't remember what all I put links for, but I put links for a lot of stuff. So you just go check those things out too.
Please, it keeps my puppy fed and kibble. So please do.
And also go follow David over on socials. If you !guest, or if you're on YouTube, look in the description. You'll find all the stuff, all the pertinent stuff, just right there. You just got to go click on them. That's all you got to do. You just do that, and you're good. And I guess, Dave, is anything you wanted to say before we get out of here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you hit the nails on the head. Tell your local comic shop you want to add all my books to your pull list, including Captain Planet and Space Ghost over at Dynamite, Cable Love and Chrome from Marvel, issue 2 comes out tomorrow. Speed Racer, which is starting on Free Comic Book Day through Mad Cave Studios. I believe that's launching in August with a new #1. We've got a few more things in the works. Follow me on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram at Pepose D, David Pepose Comics on Facebook. You can visit my website, davidpepose.com, or subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews. And thank you for everyone who's watching. Thank you for everyone who takes the time to pre-order my work. That's what kind of keeps series like mine alive. And Ernie, thank you for always being such an amazing host. Thank you for taking the time. It is always such a pleasure to catch up.
Dude, anytime. And like I said, hopefully, maybe when we get closer to the Kickstarter, or get closer to Speed Racer or anything else,
please, I would love that.
Come on down.
I would love that. I will pick you up on it for
sure. Well, ladies, gentlemen, and MBs, that is going to be the show. and we're gonna get out of here. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy your new comic book day tomorrow. I will see you all back Thursday for Nerds of Culture, and for those that don't tune in for that one, you can catch me again Saturday on the Blerd Cave. So yeah, that's it. I got nothing else. We out of here. Peace.